I'm gonna be honest with you, living in Fort Lauderdale might just not be for you and your family. But if it is, these are 10 things that you absolutely have to know about living here in Fort Lauderdale to make your move as easy as possible. And once you get here, you'll feel like a local from day one. And if you or anyone you know are looking to make the move to Fort Lauderdale and you have questions, you need help, or you just want to talk about different areas, my team and I would love to be your real estate resource of choice. You can call me, email me, text me, DM me, whatever's easiest for you. We got you to make this move as easy as possible. But now let's talk about the 10 things you have to know about living here in Fort Lauderdale. First up has to be the location, and a lot of people really don't realize how clutch of a location Fort Lauderdale really is. So for starters, you have the beach right there, pretty much right along the coast, but on top of that, you're really not too far from a lot of other major South Florida cities. You're about 30 to 45 minutes from downtown Miami, depending on traffic. You're only about an hour to maybe an hour and 15 minutes from downtown West Palm. You're about 30 minutes to Boca. You're about 15 to 20 minutes to Hollywood. Plus you have access to every single major highway right around us as well. So you have access to 95, the Turnpike, 595, you're not too far from 75 and the Sawgrass. So it makes it really, really easy to get around. On top of that, I mean, you really have other ways to get around too. If you don't want to drive, you can always Uber, but what a lot of people really do is take the Bright Line or the Tri-Rail. I haven't seen as many people take the Tri-Rail, but the Tri-Rail is really starting to catch up and offer a lot more bang for your buck, it seems like. However, it's not as bougie of an experience as the Bright Line, but the Bright Line is really like the way to go, what a lot of people really use, and that's kind of like the best way to put it. It's like our Amtrak, but also not our Amtrak at the same time. So the Bright Line is kind of South Florida's high-speed rail system with stops everywhere from downtown Miami, Aventura, downtown Fort Lauderdale, Meisner Park in Boca, and then up to downtown West Palm. And then you can now take it all the way to Orlando, where stops coming to the Treasure Coast and stops coming all the way to Tampa as well. So a lot of planning being built around that, but back to that location, Fort Lauderdale, you can hop on the Bright Line right there downtown and get anywhere you want if you don't have a car. Number two has to be the boating. I mean, at the end of the day, Fort Lauderdale is the yachting capital of the world. And yes, I know, Joe, you might not, I don't own a yacht. That doesn't apply to me. Yes, I get that. But however, you know, just because it's the yachting capital of the world doesn't mean you need a yacht to enjoy the water. So Fort Lauderdale is also known as the Venice of America due to the intricate canals and waterways throughout the entire city. And you'll kind of notice that on the map. As you look at it, you'll see all these waterways going back, the new river going all the way back into Sailboat Bend. So a lot of different places to go explore. You can still live on the water, be a little bit further from the intercoastal, pay a little bit less money, and just have to go maybe 20, 30 minutes-ish to the intercoastal, but you still live on the water, you still have your boat in the backyard, and it's still a completely different feel. On top of that, just being out on the water in general in Fort Lauderdale is kind of a way of life. It doesn't matter whether you go on your own boat, a rented boat, a kayak, a jet ski, a paddleboard. You'll see people every single weekend out there just hanging out, just trying to get some sun and just relax and kind of get away for a little bit. Speaking of the water and being out there, number three has to be the beaches. You know, we have to talk about it. Obviously, Fort Lauderdale Beach is one of the best beaches, in my opinion, in the entire state. And there's plenty to do. Plus, you have plenty of smaller beaches all around and plenty of actual options if you don't want to go to Fort Lauderdale Beach in general. But let's focus on Fort Lauderdale Beach first. So at Fort Lauderdale Beach, you have plenty of great options and different things to do. So obviously, right along A1A, you have plenty of restaurants, as well as bars. So you have things like the world famous Elbow Room, which is a ton of fun. It's cash only too, so if you're going, you got to remember to bring cash. We also have different restaurants like that of Ibiza, Senor Frogs, which is new. You have the Drunken Taco. Then you have Beach Place, which has different places like there's a little pub there. They have the new Fort Lauderdale Beach. Then they also have Lulu's Bait Shack. You can go grab some ice cream. There's also a CVS down store and even a Taco Bell cantina. So as you can see, plenty of food and drink options. Then speaking of the beach, you have the beach right there where there's volleyball. There's beachfront basketball courts, which is a ton of fun too. So remember, you got the wind, we're outside. It's a little bit different from playing at the park, but still a ton of fun. Get some sun, play some basketball. On top of that, what I was talking about with the other beaches all nearby. So Fort Lauderdale Beach can get kind of packed sometimes. Parking you do have to pay for, and it can get kind of pricey. However, there is a lot right off of Las Olas, a little bit further west of A1A. That's probably the best one, that parking garage right there. But going back to the beaches, I mean, you have plenty of options. If you don't want to go to Fort Lauderdale Beach, like the true Fort Lauderdale Beach, you also have Dania Beach just a little bit further south, which is very, very quiet. You have Hollywood Beach, which isn't too far either. You can head north and go to Lauderdale by the Sea Beach, which is really one of the best small towns in South Florida, in my opinion. Plus, they have a great downtown right there on an A1A and commercial. So you have all that to kind of explore and be able to do with the beach as well. And then you could also head further north to Pompano Beach, and they've completely redone the pier and that entire area to try to compete with Fort Lauderdale as well. Number 4 has to be the nightlife. So yes, Fort Lauderdale has an excellent nightlife now, nowhere near that of Miami. Let's be real. Miami is like here, and a lot of other cities across the entire country are trying to catch up to Miami. But Fort Lauderdale's got a great mix of everything. There really, truly is something for everyone. So if you want to go out with your family and go enjoy like a nice dinner, you can go to El Camino or the Cheesecake Factory right there in Las Olas. If you want to go to like maybe a nice happy hour, grab a glass of wine, there's different things like Rebel Wine Bar. Another great happy hour you have to go and check out is a place called Twice Removed, which is right off of Oakland Park and A1A. So great happy hours throughout pretty much all of Fort Lauderdale. We have great breweries like that of Invasive Species and Funky Buddha. If you're looking for speakeasies, we also have great ones like No Man's Land and Mama Hanks. We have dive bars like the world famous Elbow Room. There's also Blondie's right there on the beach too, which is a sports bar. We have different bars with games and outdoor activities like that of the Wharf and Booze Garden. We have rooftop bars like that of Sparrow and New Bay, which is brand new. And we even have clubs. Now, granted, the clubs are nowhere near, like I said, that of Miami, but Backyard and the new one, Chemistry, are still plenty of fun. Plus, there's a ton of stuff to do. I'm telling you, you go up and down Las Olas and like the east side of Broward, there's plenty of things. You'll find something for everyone. Plus, you also have Flagler Village that you can go and explore. So I'm telling you, if you love nightlife, but you also don't love the craziness of Miami, Fort Lauderdale is the spot for you. Number 5, we have the insurance. And look, it's no secret, there's no way around it. Insurance costs in Florida are getting pretty pricey, and they're starting to creep up there. And a lot of people have originally started to leave because these insurance costs were just blowing them out of the water. They were living in this house forever, and all of a sudden their premiums went through the roof, and they're like, whoa, screw this, I'm out, not doing this anymore. Especially on the condo side. I mean, condos have probably been hit the hardest here in Fort Lauderdale and pretty much South Florida in general. So ever since that building collapsed in Surfside, we've gone through a lot of different regulations and rules to ensure that never happens again. Doing so, a lot of these condo owners have now been slapped with over $100,000 in assessments to bring these buildings up to today's standards, along with raised association fees due to higher insurance costs, as well as having fully funded reserve funds. Now, on the flip side of that, townhomes kind of are in that same kind of boat as condos. However, with single family homes, your insurance costs are they are rising as well. I mean, think about it. We're living right near the beach, so we do have hurricanes and things. Now, granted, hurricanes, we do have a heads up when they're coming, but they can be kind of damaging to the homes, especially if they're a little bit older. So they want to make sure you have updated roofs, impact windows, all these different precautions to ensure that the home is going to be okay through the storm, as well as you and your family at the end of the day. On top of that, sometimes, depending on where you live in Fort Lauderdale, like I was saying before, we are the Venice of America, all these different canals, waterways. You're gonna have to have flood insurance, depending on where you live, most likely. So this is just added costs that you're gonna have to take into account when you're looking for a home here in Fort Lauderdale. On average, the average insurance cost here in Fort Lauderdale for a single family home is around $4,700. However, I've seen it pretty much range anywhere from about that $4,000 mark to upwards of $10,000 to $12,000. Granted, that also depends if you're on the water, size of the home, price of the home, all these different things. However, that's just kind of a good ballpark on about your starter to median priced home here in Fort Lauderdale. And number 6, it has to be the development going on here in Fort Lauderdale. For the longest time, we have been Miami's little brother. Like, if you really wanted a true downtown and like a big city feel, you went to live in Miami. And granted, Miami's it's got a bunch of different aspects to it, but it's still not like a big city compared to that of New York City. However, in recent years, especially the last probably 2 to 3, Fort Lauderdale has really put a huge emphasis on development and really coming up to par on the same thing as Miami. We're really trying to compete with Miami, and then Pompano is trying to compete with us. So with that being said, there's a ton of stuff going on, whether it's office buildings, new restaurants, new different things to do, and even the skyline. And I think the skyline is probably the most exciting one of it all. We have about 9 new buildings coming here to Fort Lauderdale, so we're gonna start to rival that of Miami. If you looked at it over the past, 5 to 10 years, you look at our skyline and our condos, they're nothing spectacular like that of Miami. We don't have the Bentley residences, we don't have some of these huge buildings coming to Fort Lauderdale, but now we finally do. So with these 9 new buildings coming, they're really gonna transform not only the skyline, but also the people coming to Fort Lauderdale. Most of the prices do start well over $1 million, and they are these luxury type buildings. So they have every amenity under the sun, concierge, you name it, they pretty much have it. We're going to be able to compete now with Miami, but also not be at Miami prices. Because if you took a lot of these buildings, like for example, the Undari residences, they're gonna be right there in Las Olas. Yes, they start over $1 million. However, if you put those in Brickell or even downtown Miami, I guarantee you those prices are starting at the high millions, probably low 2 millions. So to be able to get in at it at the starting price and then watch as Fort Lauderdale begins to develop more and more is clutch. Talk about, being able to get in at the ground floor. Speaking of the development, at number 7, we have the new construction here in Fort Lauderdale, or should I say the lack of new construction. So when you think of new construction, you think of cities like Orlando, Port St. Lucie, and Tampa, which have dozens upon dozens of these new construction townhome and single family home communities. However, when you look at Fort Lauderdale, like on the map, number 1, we're completely built out for the most part. There's really nowhere to build these communities that these other cities have. So the only logical option is to build up. Hence why we're getting a lot of these new condos coming to Fort Lauderdale. But if you're looking for a single family home and I want new construction, where in the world do I look? So you do have to go a little bit further west. So there are some communities in Davie, maybe in Plantation, Pembroke Pines, Weston. However, they are starting at, still around $1 million. You can head south to Homestead, but that's still a drive. You're at about, maybe an hour drive. Or you head north to Boca del Rey, but you're still at, $1 million. Or you even head further north into Palm Beach Gardens, and you're starting at the 800s. So really not a whole lot of options for brand new construction single family homes here in Fort Lauderdale. There are some one-offs where like a developer will buy a lot, tear down a home, and then kind of rebuild or build something gargantuan. But again, it's not truly a starter home. So if you're looking for starter homes, you're really looking on the resale side of things. And not to say that new construction is the way to go, but like resale wise, there are some great deals that you can find. Some homes that, have been completely updated and they're still very affordable. Plus there's some negotiating and wiggle room on it too. And you get to pick your area. It's not like a brand new thing, like kind of out in the middle of nowhere. These are in developed communities and established communities. So you could be right there in the heart of everything. At number 8, it has to be the tourists. So you do have to remember Fort Lauderdale is a hotbed for snowbirds and tourists in general. So I think on the snowbird side of things, you'll notice it pretty much from about like November to late March, early April. Like there is a ton of people from up north. You'll see Canadian license plates pretty much everywhere you drive. So I will tell you right now, try to avoid the best you can going on A1A because they're just driving, sightseeing. Wow, this is nice, this is sweet. But they're going like 15, 20 miles an hour because they're not in a rush to get anywhere like some of us who are rushing to get to work, rushing to get to an appointment. So it's something to keep in mind. Now granted, like the early bird specials and like earlier times for dinners, definitely get a little bit busier. Later times, it's still not bad. In the summer, in terms of tourists, it's not terrible. Like anywhere along the beach, you just have to think is constantly going to be packed because that's what tourists are there for. They're not here to kind of like hang out around Federal and like go to Flagler Village and things like that. They will, maybe at night and things, but during the day, you're pretty safe to get around those areas. Just kind of avoid the beach. Speaking of tourists, at number 9, we have spring break. So for the longest time, Fort Lauderdale has been a spring break hotspot. I mean, think about it. Beautiful beaches, clutch location like I was talking about. Spring breakers are getting it. They're understanding what's going on here in Fort Lauderdale. But for you who live here, now you're all of a sudden like, well, I'm out of college. Like, I don't think I get to really enjoy spring break like that anymore. So like, what's going on in the crowds? Is it rowdy? What's all happening? So within recent years, a lot of people have started to move more and more towards Fort Lauderdale. Miami Beach has kind of cracked down on spring break, but Fort Lauderdale has welcomed them with open arms. Obviously, we have precautions in place and things like that. But I will say, pretty much anywhere on A1A, so like the 17th Street Bridge, all the way to probably like Sunrise, maybe even Oakland, just avoid at all costs during the spring break season because you'll be sitting there in traffic going maybe a mile and a half, and it'll take you 45 minutes because it's just an absolute madhouse. Granted, the beaches are a ton of fun during that time. I mean, all the bars, restaurants, everything along A1A is absolutely packed, but it can be absolutely wild too. Speaking of that and the wildness of being packed, you gotta think about downtown and Las Olas too. Most of the time they don't really like congregate and hang out along Las Olas because I feel like a lot of them don't realize the bars, little different things, restaurants. There in Las Olas, it's still pretty much locals, but downtown Fort Lauderdale, pretty much from like the end of Las Olas, so like right where the wharf is in Velvet Taco, all the way through downtown will be absolutely swamped. And at number 10, last but definitely not least, we gotta talk about the cost of living. Like, all right, so Fort Lauderdale sounds amazing. I'm definitely gonna move here. Now, what is this gonna cost me? Like, what's this gonna run me? Is it completely unaffordable? Is it affordable? Like, what are my options? What are we looking at? So, in terms of the prices for homes here in Fort Lauderdale, the median sales price for a single family home right now in Fort Lauderdale is only $607,000. Obviously, that all depends on whether you want to live on the water, things like that, but like your average home right now is only $607,000. So that's not bad at all, especially compared to some of these prices here in South Florida. Now on the condo and townhome side, this is where you could really kind of get a deal right now, especially with everything going on. Your median sales price right now on a condo and townhome in Fort Lauderdale is only $465,000. So you're looking at about $150,000, $140,000 swing single family wise versus condo and townhome. But one thing you do have to think about with condos and townhomes is you will have an association fee. So if you're not really big on like condo associations and you want to have like no HOA, nothing, a lot of homes in Fort Lauderdale don't have HOAs. So if you want to save some money on that, be able to do what you want to do in that house, single family, bite the bullet, spend a little bit more money, kind of have a little bit more space, the backyard, driveway, garage, you know, that might be the move. But not saying that living in a condo or townhome is bad by any means. I mean, it's an awesome thing, but you could live right there on the beach, have a beautiful view. Really, you don't have to leave the building if you don't want to. You could Uber Eats everything and all that. Or maybe you're like Joe, hey, I love Fort Lauderdale, I want to move here and I want to get a better idea. Yes, you've helped me a ton with figuring out different areas, different things to do, all that, but I'm just not sure I'm ready to commit to something yet. Plus, you know, I want to get a feel. I want to see where's the best spot for me. I'm going to try to rent first. Okay, no problem. Let's do it. So your median rent right now for a one bedroom here in Fort Lauderdale is only $2,600, which isn't bad whatsoever. Plus, we have plenty of great apartment complexes and a ton of new ones too. It seems like everywhere you look, they're building a brand new apartment complex, which is probably a good thing, especially for renters, because the more supply we have, and if we have more supply than demand, the prices are gonna start coming down a little bit. Plus, there are all these luxury buildings too. And if it's brand new, when they're leasing up, they're offering specials of like 1 to 2 months free. So if you need information on that, definitely let me know. On top of that, we do have plenty of private rentals too. So if you wanna rent a house, townhouse, things like that, we have plenty of options. So that's everything that you need to know about living here in Fort Lauderdale. So let me know in the comments, is there something that we left out that you definitely feel like as a local that you need to know about living here in Fort Lauderdale? And if you or anyone you know are looking to make the move to Fort Lauderdale or just South Florida in general, we'd love to be your real estate resource of choice. Call me, text me, DM me, whatever's easiest for you, we got you.